Clearly?
Yes.
Okay, it's good to be here. Welcome to KCD Bangalore and the first talk of the day. I know everyone has a fresh mind. And today we are going to talk about, get started with OpenTelemetry, right? Anyone already familiar with OpenTelemetry before? Either they're using, all right, great. So we have a few people there. Nice. We are going to start with OpenTelemetry and because we believe that this particular technology is the future of observability. We are pretty much excited for this. My name is Kunal. I'm working as a DevRel engineer at Randoli, and I'm joining here today with Rajat.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rajit. I'm the founder and CTO for Randoli. It's a pleasure to be here. Very happy to see all of you. Very excited. I loved all the energy out there. So many great conversations. I'm already tired before I even did my talk because there's so many conversations that happened around the hallway. So great to see all of you, and welcome to our talk.
Amazing, yeah. So let's get started, right? I quickly want to ask you a couple of questions just to know a bit about the audience. How many of you have some kind of observability stack set up in your organization right now? Maybe you're using a vendor. Oh, okay. We've got a lot of people.
Open source, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Open source tools, any vendors, right? So we've got a bunch of people. That's awesome. So for those of you who raised their hands, do you think that it has been effective for you till now, your setup? And by effectiveness, I mean it maybe help you to troubleshoot issues faster, detect them faster, maybe resolve your mean time to response, decrease that. Okay? Oh, very less hands. Great. So I've got some information about the audience here, but the real question that I want to ask you all, and trust me, this is the last one, is do you have control over the data, your observability data, right? And I'm not just asking this from a vendor or a marketing perspective. I'm just asking you, as a fellow engineer, as a fellow DevOps, SRE, or maybe you are working at a platform team. Do you have control over the data that you're sending to these observability, either vendors or your tools? Because the fact is, most of the teams already have some kind of observability setup, right? You all raised your hands. I saw the number right now. But the fact of the matter is, the question we got to ask ourselves, do we really have the control to capture or to have the control over the data pipeline? Do you know what you're sending? Do you know what you're storing? What's the quality of the data that you're sending, right? And by quality, I don't just mean ownership of the data. I also mean the cost which is associated with the data, right? Because at the end, indirectly or directly, you are the ones who are paying the bills, right? So are you the one who is in control of your data and the cost that comes with it, or is someone else doing that for you, right? So the truth is, there is a hidden cost to doing effective observability, right? And there are a few pointers that we really see people talking and dwelling upon, right? Because most of the teams today, what the approach is, they are really sending all of their telemetry data to these tools, to these vendors, right? And that comes with a few catches. You are either set up with some proprietary agents, you are stuck with that. If you want to, let's say, navigate or shift to any other tool, you're not able to do that. That's a huge task, right? Maybe you are not doing filtering, you're not pre-processing your data. That means you are sending low value or raw telemetry data to these tools, and that might hinder your insights, right? But the most important one is, because you are paying for that data, the telemetry volume is so huge, you're also paying for that low quality data, right? So the meaning of this is, number one, we are not in control of the data pipeline. We are not in control of what we are sending, plus we are paying for that, right? And that doesn't jive with, I don't think it jives with each other, right? We don't want that. So let me ask you this question again. Do you think you have control over your telemetry data, right? Because as I mentioned, telemetry volume is really huge, and that comes with a high cost as well. Would you want to be in control over what you are sending, or do you want someone else to control that for you? And this is obviously a problem, right? So what's the solution out there? How can you solve this? We believe that OpenTelemetry is a step towards gaining that control, towards giving you that control, right? And the idea for OpenTelemetry is pretty simple. You instrument once, you instrument your services, your application once, you send your data anywhere to the supported backend, so to any vendor or the tools that you want. The only difference being you control everything in between. You are controlling how much you're sending, what kind of data you are sending, what's the quality of data that you're sending, right? So, and this is the ideal scenario. This is what you would want, to have more control over your data pipeline and essentially to control the cost of that particular the observability that you're doing. So if some of you are still a bit convinced, if you are, then I think I'm doing a good job here. But if not, we have a really quick demo for you to just show you how this may look in real life, right? Over to you, Rajat.
Okay, cool. All right, Kunal, do you mind then controlling it? I'll
Yes.
speak to it. Okay, cool. So first thing I want to show you here is that, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
You back?
Yeah.
All right. So, very easy to get started. You install the OpenTelemetry operator, right? You can, specify your hotel name, go down, you instrument, auto instrumentation, zero code instrumentation. If you want to add extra spans and stuff like that, there's the, OpenTelemetry SDKs, vendor neutral, collectively published by the OpenTelemetry community. You instrument here, that's it, right? Now, let's look at your OpenTelemetry pipeline. Here's where the magic happens, and here's where you gain control. So first thing is, you can define multiple, backends or exporters, where you can send it to multiple storage mechanisms. You can talk, you can have control by, can you show the processors, if you don't mind? Yeah, see? You can control what you're sending, batching, filtering, pre-processing. That gives you control over, the data you're sending in terms of fixing the quality of the data, as well as doing any kind of extra correlation to improve the quality of the data by correlating more, right? And then, if you see, that's the, what he just scrolled up was the different processes that you can put. And then finally, yeah, see, that's what I meant about the processes. And then when you come back here, at the bottom of the pipeline, and we'll break it down to you, you can send it to multiple locations. The value here is you instrument once with OpenTelemetry, open source framework, and you have now control over how you filter, process the data, and then sending it to multiple backends without any kind of change. So this is Jaeger, a very popular one for distributed tracing, right? The same setup, right? Like you saw that in the exporter part, we were sending to Jaeger. He'll click on one of those things, and yeah. The other data source, if you remember, I should have pointed it out, it was OpenSearch. Exact same, data in the pipeline, we are sending to Jaeger, now we are sending it to OpenSearch. No change in your code. No change in the way you instrumented it. It's the pipeline that does it, right? It's the exact same trace. And then finally, any kind of vendor product that actually supports OpenTelemetry. So by now, if you don't mind going back to that pipeline again that we had, yeah, see here, right at the bottom, we were sending to multiple backends. No, further down, exporters. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we are sending to the OpenSearch collector. We were sending it to Jaeger. Yeah, right. You control your observability pipeline, and that's the power of OpenTelemetry. You can control everything in between and where you send.
All right, so I hope this sounds a bit interesting. Some people are curious about what OpenTelemetry is. So there's a little primer for all of you. So OpenTelemetry is basically an open source observability framework that basically standardizes the way you collect, process, and export your telemetry data, right? It's vendor neutral so that you can use any OTel supported backend with that. Maybe that's a vendor or any observability tools, for example, Jaeger and Prometheus. It works with any OTel backend. It's language agnostic and cloud agnostic. You can use the instrumentation APIs and SDKs, which we'll definitely discuss later as well, to instrument your application once, and then you can choose any tool that you want to export that particular data, right? The main part is it's a CNCF incubating project. That means it's backed by a really huge community, and that's why it's on the way to becoming sort of the de facto of observability, just like at one point in time, Kubernetes has become the de facto of containerization, right? So this is basically sort of it shows the glimpse of OpenTelemetry adoption, how when it got started till this particular point. This graph basically shows all the companies itself which are contributing to the project, right? So you can see the adoption, plus you can also see that the companies are contributing to it. So it definitely has the power, right? Because it is giving you that control that you need. Now, to understand how OpenTelemetry works, right, there are a couple of concepts that we need to learn. Number one is, what are the core telemetry signals which OpenTelemetry supports currently as of now? So we have the pillar of observability, we have the logs, metrics, and traces. We also have events and profiles, which are under development right now. The community is working on these. But you have the ability to standardize the way you are exporting, processing, and collecting these logs, metrics, and traces. The second concept, and this is where things get interesting, right? OpenTelemetry supports distributed tracing via the concept of context propagation. How many of you are familiar with distributed tracing here? Okay, there are a few people. So distributed tracing means, and what does context propagation means, is that the same trace is basically the request, and spans are basically the operations in that particular request. So every request will have a certain unique ID which will be sent to all the different operations. So let's say if a particular payment service has an error, you will be able to see all the traces which are of the services which are connected to the payment service. So end-to-end visibility using context propagation, and that is what OpenTelemetry gives you in the hands, right? It gives you the power to have this end-to-end visibility. Now there are the core components of OpenTelemetry, the how OpenTelemetry is able to give us the vendor neutrality, how is it able to give us that control. The number one component is the OTel spec, or the OpenTelemetry specification, which basically gives you all the specification and the rules of standardization of how you collect, process, and export your relevant telemetry data. You have the language-specific APIs and SDKs. How many of you are developers here? Developers sitting? Great. So these are APIs and SDKs that you can use to instrument your application based on the language that you're using. You can use these to send the telemetry data to that specific central component, which we'll talk about as well. And this is the most important one, which is OTLP, OpenTelemetry Line Protocol. This is what gives you the vendor neutral behavior, right? Because it's a single protocol that is used to first send the data, process it, and then export it to any supported backend, right? So it doesn't matter if you have different types of telemetry signals. If it supports OpenTelemetry, you can send them to any of the supported backends using the OTLP protocol, right? It's both supported in gRPC and in HTTP. The second most important component is the OpenTelemetry collector, which we are going to cover in the next slide as well. But just to give you all a gist, it's the central processing unit of OpenTelemetry, which first collects the data, which you can set up some processors to either batch the data or filter the data and then export to the supported backends. And this is what gives you that control. This is what gives you the ability to control what you're sending, how much you're sending, to control the quality of the data that you're sending, right? And of course, then you can control the cost of observability as well. Lastly, for all the SRE, platform engineers, and DevOps people here, you have the Kubernetes operator. Let's say if you don't want to touch your application code itself. You can use the Kubernetes operator inside your cluster, use the OTel config, and you can configure auto-instrumentation of your application without even touching your application code, right? So this gives the power in the hands of both the developers using APIs and SDKs, and the DevOps and platform and SRE engineers using the Kubernetes operator as well.
All right, okay, awesome. All right. So yeah, just picking up from there, during the demo, we showed the order service, the Spring Boot service, just had a single annotation, and we got spans in Jaeger, OpenSearch, and in our platform, all without any kind of proprietary massaging, right? And that's that pipeline that I showed. So it's a little bit more easy to see over here. You have the annotations, the SDKs that we talked about that actually gathers the data, and then the receivers are the ones that actually gets the data, ingest them, and then the processors. That's where the magic happens, like I explained, right? You can batch, you can sample, you can filter. So this is where you can drop some low-quality things, like for example, debug logs or things you don't care about. Or for example, if you have high cardinality attributes, and I'll talk a little bit about that, that can actually create an explosion in your metrics backends, can be dropped. or you can correlate between different signals and enrich the OpenTelemetry, increase the quality. Better quality means better insights for you, right? You can control all of that using the processors, and then the exporters is when you send. So that's why I send it to multiple exporters, right? By taking control of this pipeline, and you can also change these controls as well. That's the next slide. You can see over here, you can change multiple controls. 15-minute mark? Yeah, good. Multiple controllers, you can chain them together, so you can do more sophisticated stuff. So for example, today in the morning I had some conversations with some folks where sometimes they're getting millions of spans in an hour. Humanly, it's impossible for you to look at millions of spans even on a dashboard, right? So what do you do with that? How do you process that? Maybe you can have a pipeline that actually stores them, and then you can have a secondary pipeline that actually can look at that source, do some what you call tail sampling. So if you have a million spans, you can possibly humanly look at all, but you might want to look at some. How do you pick which ones to look at, right? So those are the things that you can do by combining OpenTelemetry pipelines. In very high volume situations, you can have a messaging system like Kafka to buffer between these telemetry pipelines. There's a lot of possibilities for you. You can really control the volume and the quality of your telemetry. All right, so here's a little bit more easier to understand breakdown from the demo. You can see the receivers that we talked about. So those are the processors that we talked about. And then this is where the different endpoints we were sending for the tracers. And this at the bottom is how you put all of those things together. You can also write your own custom processors, right? So if you look at the OpenTelemetry project, there are built-in processors that you can use, but you can use the SDKs and write your own custom processors on top of that, so that you can really control what you do with the telemetry data. Hey Ram, nice to see you. All right, so let's quickly talk about adopting OpenTelemetry, right? This is important because a lot of folks ask us, how do we get started, right? Where do we start? So let's look at the first challenge. You're already using some sort of a vendor SDK or agent. Most of the observability vendors are supporting OpenTelemetry, so ask them, can we use OpenTelemetry? Switch to the OTel SDKs. Use the OTel agents. You can still use OTel and still work with your existing vendor, right? Just ask for the choice, like we want to use OpenTelemetry. Second one is too much low-value telemetry. This is how you can reduce your observability bill. Whoever you're sending, whichever vendor you choose, do some pre-processing, do some filters, do some custom processes that can help you drop some of the low-value telemetry before you send it to the vendor. That is how you can control the cost. Yep, lack of governance, this is big. I will talk about that a little bit as well in a subsequent slide. But here, like with any standard, still there's a couple gray areas. There's some things that you can do to address things like how you name, right? How you name your your services, how you name your spans, how do you, for example, how you structure certain attributes, and I'll talk a little bit more about this. But you need to, especially if you're operating at scale, you need to think about governance of your telemetry data. High data volumes, we talked about this over and over again. This is where you want to do sampling, batching, pre-processing before exporting. It's not just the low-value telemetry, but it's also the volume can contribute to cost, right? By using these strategies, you should be able to take ownership of your telemetry pipelines or telemetry data and reduce the cost, right?
All right, so if we were able to slightly convince any one of you to adopt OTel today, here are a few pointers that we'll give you to just sort of a checklist for you to just get started implementing OTel into your setup and just getting your hands dirty with it, right? So what you can do is you can start either in a staging or a dev environment, right? You can instrument one service if you're a developer using the OpenTelemetry SDK. If you are an SRE or a DevOps or someone from the platform team, you can use the Kubernetes operator to do auto instrumentation for you, right? Then you need to run the OTel collector, right? And there are a couple of options that you can do. Either you can run the OTel collector locally, either using Docker, Docker Compose. That's the simplest setup that you can do just to try things out. Or you can also deploy in the OTel collector in your cluster itself, and you'll have to configure the OTel config that we showed you previously, where you define the receivers, the processors, and the exporters, basically your entire pipeline, right? Just to get quickly started, you can start by exporting your traces to Jaeger and metrics to Prometheus. These are the two simplest backends which you can use just to get things going. And you can, because OpenTelemetry enables distributed traces via context propagation out of the box, you can configure that for one service to get that end-to-end visibility. This is the simplest setup that you can do just to try things out, just to see how OpenTelemetry is working and how it can add value to your existing, either your existing observability stack or if you want to ever migrate to it, right? And then lastly, you can expand it gradually to different data types and different particular services. But the one thing is, this is for someone who's just getting started with OTel, right? But the next thing comes is how you want to scale your OpenTelemetry, right? So Rajat, do you want to cover that?
Sure. One little thing to add there, it's a pretty common question that people ask is, can I get end-to-end visibility from the browser or my mobile application all the way to the backend? You can. You know, there's a SDK for React, and all you need to do is to configure your certain OpenTelemetry endpoints and expose it outside with an ingress in a secure way, and then it can push telemetry from the browser, and that same trace will continue from the browser to the load balancer, API gateway, microservices, all the way to your database, and so on and so forth. So you can get end-to-end visibility. You know, if that way, if you're interested. All right. So
if you would wanna, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If you would wanna see something like this, like end-to-end visibility, we have a MERN stack demo with us. So it's like a MongoDB Express React application. We click the browser, it will communicate to the MongoDB database, and you can see the traces and request flow end-to-end, right? So if anyone is interested to see that, you can definitely meet us at the booth.
Okay, awesome. All right. So Kunal talked about how to get started. Well, now if you know, some people may be already using it, or now you want to get going, you want to put it in production. How do you do this, right? So I think before you kind of use it at scale, the first thing to pay attention, I already talked about governance. Please pay attention to naming conventions. You know, like if you have different teams talking, like, you know, naming them in a different way, you know it like this. I mean, we have this same problem with anytime you adapt something at scale, right? Have consistent standards in how you want to name your services, your spans. That gives you a way for everyone to know, like, if you're talking about a particular service, how the name should be structured. It matters if you're operating this at scale, right? High cardinality, this is something that's very important to understand, because, so when I say high cardinality data, like for example, what I'm talking about is, let's say you take a HTTP request, right? There could be a user ID or an HTTP path which can vary from request to request, right? And high cardinality data, anytime you look at Prometheus and other metrics backends, high cardinality data puts a lot of stress on that metrics backend and causing issues, and also making your query time slower, right? So filter out the high cardinality data. Maybe you don't need to know what the user IDs or the HTTP paths, or you can at least, you know, using some filtering criteria, remove, like for example, you have /order /order ID. For every order, it's different. You probably don't need that, right? But all you need is /order, and the rest you can remove, right? So doing some pre-processing can help you reduce the high cardinality of the metrics and you know, metrics data that you collect, right? Yeah, so this is another one. So, for example, okay, so OTel is also not perfect. There are some libraries would put HTTP status code in a different way versus another library, right? So pay attention to this, because if you're writing queries, if you're writing, let's say you're building some AI capabilities, whatever you're doing, if you have different ways of naming a single attribute, that's going to cause you issues, right? So how do you fix that? Just like, you know, remember like in the database days, we use like normalizing. What you can do is you can have a consistent way, whether it's your Go microservices or your Java microservices, whatever, wherever you're getting this, try to normalize it into a single one. So maybe we pick the first one, right? HTTP status underscore code. If you see the other one, you actually, you know, you can do a transformation, and now every trace that is getting indexed into your backend will have the same attribute name. That gives you a lot of power because now you can write the same scripts and queries without having to write multiple different ways to accommodate the drift, right? So please pay attention to that. Sampling inconsistencies, this is another one. If one service is sending at 80%, the other one is 100%, something else is another sampling rate, it can give you the wrong picture when you're looking at latencies and throughput rates or error rates. So for folks who are not familiar with sampling, sampling is about, let's say you get 1 million traces, you want to look at a certain block, that's sampling. So you're looking at 10% of it or 20% of it, right? Have a consistent sampling rate, at least across the microservices that are participating in the same transaction. Because if you have order service at 80% and your shipping service at 100%, you're getting the wrong picture, right? So that is important to keep in mind. And then coverage graphs. Some libraries and frameworks and vendor services may not have native hotel support. A good example is the AWS application load balancers. They don't natively support hotel. So it's a bit of a gap. So you might see coming from the browser and then hitting your API gateway, but you miss a span in the middle for that. Maybe there are different ways to handle that, but pay attention. Look at coverage gaps and figure out how to plug them, because then you start to get a more complete picture of your tracing. And once you get to distributed tracing, it's an amazing way to debug hotspots like slow transactions, other latency issues. And there's something called span metrics that is calculated off the metrics. It gives you a lot of good data for you to debug your performance issues and troubleshoot other scenarios. Yeah. So we were trying to. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, we talked a lot about the quality of the data, garbage in, garbage out, right? A lot of people are building agentic AI workflows, right? So having the right, semantic conventions, thinking about, the drift that I talked about, like the same status code being named 10 different ways. If you have the right kind of data, you can build amazing things on top of that, right? So we wanted to do a live demo, but we couldn't record anything because of internet issues and time pressure. But this is an agentic AI workflow that was actually built on top of data that's collected using OpenTelemetry. If you own the data, if you control the quality of the data, you can do amazing things yourself. You don't have to rely on a vendor, or even if you use a vendor product, you have control. So that's the key message, because I know a lot of folks talk to us about this, about agentic AI flows. Hey, how can we build this? How can we access the data? You can start with OpenTelemetry, because OpenTelemetry will give you the ability to not just send it to a vendor, you can keep the data for yourself, and you can do interesting things with it. Provided you have high quality data, you know how to control the volume, and you know how to adjust certain things, right? To structure it in such a way that you can take advantage of things like agentic AI, right? All right.
So if this is something that made you a bit more curious to know more, right? We have been having like multiple conversations with people since the morning about OpenTelemetry. Already had a lot of amazing conversations. We would love to see you at our booth outside. And we also have this very interesting trivia quiz at 3 p.m.-ish or 3:20 p.m., which is the second coffee break, right? So we have a 10-question live quiz on Kubernetes observability, and you can win some awesome swag as well while there. But yeah, if you would love to chat more about OpenTelemetry and how it can give you that control, that data privacy, and how it can help you to reduce your observability cost, we'd love to have a chat with you all. This is a QR code that you all can scan and learn a bit more about OpenTelemetry, the main core concepts, and how you can start using them in your existing stack, or if you want to switch to OpenTelemetry. I hope you do so, right? But yeah, thanks for being so patient and for listening today.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all your support, and hopefully the talk was useful.
Thank you, Rajit and Kunal. Always a pleasure. How many of you, this is the first time that you're hearing about OpenTelemetry? I know it's unlikely, but anybody of that sort? Been wanting to try? Okay, that's one person.
Yeah,
been wanting to try, but have been stopping? Have not tried yet? Okay. A couple of them. I hope you've gotten a few insights. I'm sure you would have gotten a few insights to start with. Okay, I invite Nitin to felicitate the speakers.
Yeah. Sorry we didn't have enough time to take questions, but you can always chat us up. We are around the whole day today.
Yeah, do visit the booth. They have a very cool demo as well. You can see the demo live.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for giving us the opportunity
Thank you so
to come
much.
and talk to you. Yes,
means a lot.
take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.